Welcome back. You're still watching the news review right here on Citizen TV with me, Fred Ndimuli. We continue looking at the big story of the day. Parliament resumes its sittings today. And of course, the biggest question, the biggest concern is how much influence parties have on their members, on their representatives in the House. We're talking about both Jubilee and NASA. NASA has managed to convince all its members to stay away and keep away from all the serious business of the House. That has an effect. Meanwhile, Jubilee continues to influence its majority side, its huge numbers in the House, to simply rubber stamp what the executive says. What does this mean for the future of this legislature? And that's the main headline on the front page of the Daily Nation. Will House fight for its freedom? Yes, Parliament has never been as cracked as it is today, and the invasion of party interests is making an already bad situation worse. Now, a quote here on the front page of the Daily Nation: we will have very little, if anything, to do there if we do not fight to restore the independence of Parliament. Peter Kaluma, Homa Bay Town MP, that's a member of NASA, already raising concerns about the independence of Parliament. But this independence is also suffering from what NASA is doing to its members as well. Now, there's also something to be said about the caliber of members elected to the House. And probably that's where the problem is, that yes, legislators, in as much as they may have benefited from parties during the election, they are expected by those people who elected them to think independently, to actually add value to whatever discussion there is in Parliament. But we seem to have a voting machine. We seem to have legislators who cannot think beyond what their parties are saying. Cases of a legislator coming up and saying, no, even if my party says this, I think it can be done differently. We are not seeing a lot of that.
You see what happened? Let us not look at the composition of Parliament now. Let us look at the party nominations. During the party nominations, only people who were very loyal to the party were given the party tickets. Anybody who looked independent lost. And therefore the people who are in Parliament are not in Parliament because they are popular. They're in Parliament because they were in a party that was popular in that region. And the party is being ethnic based, not ideologically based. The members of Parliament must be on the watch to protect the ethnic interests. So when you look for example in NAS, let us go back. There was a time when Syria's Professor Nyang' then moved to SDP. There was my senior James Agre Orengo, the senior lawyer, moved to SDP to contest against NDP, that was the Raila party. They lost very badly. We have seen people in Mount Kenya region who tried to raise up their head. The Kabogos, they were thrown out. They tried to go to the independent parties, the Mother Karuas. They lost very badly. We have seen people in Ukambani and all over. So the question that Kenyans want to ask now, don't ask now. Ask yourself, did you vote a member of Parliament based on his competence, or you voted yourself as a machine? We Kenyans vote as tribal machines, but we expect the products that we have voted for to have brains. So the mistake is not with the members of Parliament. The mistake is with the voters. Okay. Because you look at the mediocrity of the members of Parliament. For God's case, we elected dancers, we elected cartoonists, we elected people who could make us laugh, we elected people who had 50 shillings, we elected people who have very many criminal records in being charged in court. That is the criteria for being an elected member of Parliament. So, dust in, dust out. Let us not expect so much. We get what we deserve as citizens of this nation.
Do you agree with Bonomari?
I think I do. Of course, Wakili is putting it in a fairly colorful and dramatic manner. But essentially, I think the problems we have speaks to the caliber of leaders we have. Somebody last year, a friend, I don't know whether you saw it, he wrote something about a caricature of what a Kenyan politician is. And you know, there were about 4 things. I mean, I picked about 2. One, a Kenyan politician does not speak about issues. He speaks around issues. If you go to a political rally and start prosecuting an economic, a socio agenda, to the electorate, and you have a very clear mind, a very clear work plan, a very clear outcomes, they will ignore you. Your opponent will come dancing his way, and then that fellow will be elected. So this fascination with the spectacle, drama, color, really is what partly has led us to here. You know, we have celebrities today, people who have been successful in their own other callings, and the electorate believes that can be translated into political capability. That is a very interesting argument. That because I'm a very successful businessman, I've got a fleet of matatus, and I've been very successful in running my business, that success can be replicated as a political leader. You know, and you look at it. I mean, I make money as a professional, as a lawyer, like my good friend here, or as a farmer. And just because you've been the best dairy farmer in one of those counties, and you are celebrated when we have those fields.
But there should be some value that such people can add. I'm sure if at all you're successful in one area, it means, yes, we should try out. Probably your system of success in that area could benefit us to some extent.
That is the dilemma. You cannot replicate your success in one field to the other. It doesn't follow. I mean, look at it. Successful politicians basically are people who you will not find that were successful in many other areas. But we tend to have this very interesting mentality that just because I'm successful in what I'm doing, I should be able to replicate that in the political arena.
So if I sing a song and it sells, I can...
So I think the voter is primarily also to blame for the dilemma we are in. They gave the president, they gave NASA leaders, the Jubilee leaders who basically are not, in my own respectable view, not able to make a critical input into the discourse for remember the president and I think the leader of the NASA people. I want to be persuaded that these are people who want to benefit from the best brains, the best minds within their party. But they can only work with what we give them.
Yes.
So what Uhuru is working with is what we give him. What Raila is working with is the people that the electorate give him. These were fellows who are dancing most of the time. These were people basically who will not raise an issue. I am sure in the heart of heart, within a critical mass of the NASA people, they are persuaded that there could be a way in which there can be some rapprochement between the two divides. That is staying out of parliament in the fullness of time.
Because the kind of discussion up until now has been very devoid of hope. That we are only starting out because this is when Parliament really is starting out serious business. Even the committee that works out the order of business in the House is yet to be constituted. This is when we are starting the real deal. There should be some hope. We cannot say that, yes, for the next 4 or 5 years, we'll just continue the way things are.
They should.
But where do you think we'll be able to strike that kind of alliance, that members from both sides will actually settle down and work seriously together?
In the fullness of time, friend, the bigger interest of Kenya will prevail. And it will take a bit of time. Remember, there are a lot of people are still very, very bitter. You know, it's too early in the day. You know, in the morning process is a process. It's not a one event.
Yes.
And it will wane with time. You know, pain wanes with time. And with the fullness of time, the hard position between the two political formations will start, waning, so to speak. And you know, they'll start coming together. There'll be general consensus on what is the best interest of Kenya. And Kenya is not synonymous with the interest of Jubilee or the interest of NASA. The Kenyan interest is Kenyan interest, and it's a standalone entity.
So the takeout from this discussion is that this kind of divide that is already causing concerns will not necessarily last for the entire 5 years.
I don't think it is going to end. Why do I say that I am completely on the opposite side of my good friend here? Is that based on the selfish economic interest-based politics of this nation, hardliners have captured President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto's kitchen cabinet. Hardliners have captured Raila Odinga's issue because there are people who benefit economically whenever such crises occur. And those are the people who have always led this nation to a bigger problem. When you look at the composition of the cabinet of President Uhuru Kenyatta, tell me the men and women who will stand firm and tell the president that this is the law. And this one, we cannot move away. One or two. When you look at the NASA brigade, tell me the men and women who tell Raila Odinga that you cannot go to be sworn at Uhuru Park. That is rubbish. Very few. Reason is that the moment you stand and put your neck out and tell the president or tell the deputy or tell Raila Odinga or tell the Inspector General of Police or tell the Auditor General that the law as it is, this is the law, you lose your job. Kenyans are so scared of being counted as people who stood on the right side of history. So those people, the tenderpreneurs on both sides, are what are the people causing this country a problem. When you go to parliament, you've asked, are there no women and men of respect to stand in parliament and say, this bill is going to affect my constituents in Gatanga? What will somebody say? If it has come from Jubilee, I'll support it. If it has come from NASA, I'll support it. We are the people, we are a nation where we say things, but we cannot talk. And that is the problem.
So these divisions, you don't see them ending?
The divisions will not end because the divisions of our leaders are not per se our leaders' creations. It is a problem with us. So that when we vote, we do not vote based on, ask the people. In 2005, when we were passing the referendum about the constitution, who read the constitution? People said, Kibaki and Raila Odinga have read. And everybody was voting. Go to parliament today, the bills that are coming here, those guys have not even seen those bills. They will walk in and say, where is the punching I vote? So then this narrative that our leaders lead and read for us is where the problem is. We need citizens of this nation to give birth to children who will critically evaluate issues. People of principle cannot be accommodated by the political class.
Well, that's what's happening in Kenya. There is a serious concern about the kind of influence that parties, the major parties, and that's Jubilee, and the NASA coalition of parties, the kind of influence they have on their members that is actually affecting the business of the other arm of government, which is Parliament. Something else similar is happening in South Africa. The influence that ANC as a party has, the kind of power that it holds. As we speak, President Jacob Zuma has been given 48 hours to step down by the party. As we speak, those hours have reduced. It should be 40 hours or 30-something hours. And he has no choice but to do it, because they'll go to Parliament and actually throw him out of whatever it is they call their state house. They will do it. This is a party. Yes. Whatever anyone else thinks, that's up to them. But this is how strong a party can be.
Absolutely. But remember, the arrangement in South Africa is slightly different, because the president is not voted directly. The president is picked from the party with the majority seats in parliament. So really,
if that was a system in Kenya, really, do you think with the kind of composition we have right now of Jubilee, if Jubilee was able to pick the president directly from parliament?
Remember, the mandate of the president in Kenya is direct. He's chosen direct by Kenyans, not through the party.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Of course, it's sponsored by the party, which is the opposite in South Africa. So the political architecture is slightly different.
Because there have been those discussions. Even NASA said that probably we should adopt that kind of system, where instead of directly voting for the president, just vote for the legislature. Then the party with the strongest, with the biggest strength in parliament, then picks the president.
Precisely. You know, this will be a very healthy discussion, because basically we'll be asking ourselves, has the current government architecture served us well? Are there areas you can cure? Now, you cannot do that in the People's Assembly. You cannot do you can only do that in the National Assembly.
But do you think that that would be the best remedy for the kind of influence as the executive? We are now complaining the executive has too much influence on parliament. That probably if we had this system, then parliament would be more powerful.
Fred, when we were making the constitution, what was the motive of having the new constitution? It was not because we had a governance structure that was wrong. It was because it was the only way to remove Moi from power. That is the motive. Once we removed Moi from power, the next question was, which model do we use in the constitutional dispensation? The debate was, citizens wanted a parliamentary system. When the politicians went to Naivasha, everybody was convinced they have the numbers, and they wanted to enjoy the presidential system. So mischievously, both political divides agreed to a presidential system. The presidential system seems to have benefited the Kibaki regime and the Uhuru regime, to the detriment of Raila Odinga's regime. Raila Odinga has now again come back saying, no, let us go to the parliamentary system. So in Kenya here, we've never had a governance structure that is real, that is people-centered. Everybody wants to have a system that fits him. So how many times are we going to change the constitution? Are we going to change the laws of this country and the constitution of this country to fit into one man, one woman, or one lady's interest? So in my own view, I think the system that we have has no problem. The problem is the voters. The problem is the children born to become leaders in this country who grow and get socialized in the Kenyan way. So in South Africa, when you look at what is happening, Zuma is a beneficiary of the same approach. Thabo Mbeki was sitting as the president after Nelson Mandela left. Zuma instigated elections. He became the chair, the president of ANC. They recalled Thabo Mbeki. Zuma has been saying Ramaphosa coming. And what did he do? He started grooming his wife, Dlamini Zuma, to be the party leader. Zuma had an intention to hand over power to his wife. So he has been outsmarted. He should not cry. Zuma should pack and leave. The same measure you use is the same measure that exits you. Even Mugabe. Mugabe, the party had to recall him. In Tanzania, we've seen a very strong party. So in some countries where parties are very strong, you subscribe to the ideals of the party.
Don't you think